That concludes the end of my public service announcements. So on to the forum. Tonight, we do welcome 4 candidates for Ward 2 special election. They are Natalie Jones, Natalie King, Michael Starks, and Cynthia Wagner. We thank the candidates for participating in tonight's forum. The 5th candidate, Latonia Hines, unfortunately cannot join us tonight due to scheduling conflicts. But she has passed along her regards and her apologies for not being able to make it. This forum will be recorded and shared publicly so voters can have a chance to view it, particularly those that may not be able to attend tonight's forum. Well, with that said, we have established a format and some ground rules for this forum that we hope will allow things to move smoothly. So first, each candidate will have up to 1 minute for opening remarks. And at the conclusion of the question and answer period, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing remarks. Second, only the moderator, that's me, will ask questions of the candidates. And these questions were submitted from Ward 2 residents as well as the Smart Smyrna team. Candidates have received the general topics of the questions prior to the forum, and I believe each of you has acknowledged that. Thirdly, candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer each panel question. And in order to be fair, the order of the candidate responses will be varied for each question. Fourth, audience members have been allowed to submit ad hoc questions in our Zoom chat and via email. So as time permits, we will pose up to 3 of those questions after the formal question and answer period. Fifth, we have committed to all of you candidates that this forum will last no longer than 90 minutes. And to keep us on track, we do have a Smart Smyrna team member who will be acting as our timekeeper. The timekeeper will sound a warning tone when you have about 30 seconds left of your 2-minute time period. So please be aware of that. Also note that if your responses do exceed the 2-minute limit, you will automatically be muted so we can move on to the next candidate and give them the same amount of time. All right, and then finally, candidates should address their responses to the audience and to the moderator, not to each other. Candidates should not address each other directly. However, candidates can refer to comments and or positions of other candidates as part of their responses. Let me pause there to ensure there are no questions around the ground rules for this evening. Fantastic. Great. Then we'll begin the proceedings with our 1-minute opening remarks, and we will start in last name alphabetic order. So that means we will begin with Miss Natalie Jones.
Thank you so much, Ken. And thank you, Smart Smyrna, for organizing, and to all of my fellow Smyrna neighbors who took time to be here this evening. I'm Natalie Jones. I'm an 18-year resident of Ward 2 here in Smyrna. And I think what I love most about being in the Smyrna area is that sense of community. And why I decided to run for is because I think we have to be intentional moving forward to keep that sense of community for Smyrna to thrive. And that intentionality includes, in a world that seems probably more disconnected and more divisive than ever, we need to find those ways for respect, listening, and connectivity. So one of the first things that I would do is form an HOA council for all of the neighborhoods and HOAs along the Ward 2 corridor. And Ken, I'm afraid I'm almost out of time, so I'll close there, but I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your cooperation with that. All right, next, Miss Natalie King.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. I'm often asked, where are you from? Georgia. Where are you really from? Smyrna. Our first house was on Dundee Drive, and I remember playing tennis and swimming at Ryan Park. I had the privilege of going from Smyrna to Harvard. I give credit to my wonderful teachers, including my mother, who was a teacher of the year. I remember what made Smyrna special. Our city is at a crossroads. It's not about going back to the past. It's needing someone who remembers what made Smyrna special, who could be a bridge and a balance between the old and the new. I've always been a leader who finds connections, finding creative solutions. We have the best people in the city. We can find transit solutions that fit our size and budget. Maybe not overnight, but we can find housing solutions so people who work here, like the teachers and nurses and police, can afford to live here. We can build with good design and reduce maintenance costs. So voting for me, Natalie King, will be a vote for the people, not a party, not partisanship. And we will look forward and we'll move forward together. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you so much. Next, Mr. Michael Starks.
All right, thank you to Smart Smyrna and for the other candidates. My name is Michael Starks. I live in the Highlands neighborhood. I have a wife and 18-month-old daughter who I chase around a lot and is a ball of fun. But part of the excitement here is no one person has a monopoly on good ideas. So I'll present my ideas. I'm really excited to hear what everybody else is talking about as well. And I also think the government is serious, the business is serious, but it needs to have energy. People don't participate in things that are dull, so I try to bring that energy as well. I had lunch recently with Susan Wilkerson from Ward 5, and she talked about all of the changes to the council and the administration recently, reducing meeting times, deliberation times, cutting out meetings. These projects that we engage in define Smyrna for the next 50, 70 years. We need to get them right. Especially one of the things is we have a mayor who's a lobbyist, right? Those projects need more scrutiny, not less. So we just need to make sure we focus on getting it right. You'll hear themes tonight about process, about discussion,
Thank you,
about
sir.
focus on that. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. And Ms. Cynthia Wagner.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm thrilled to be a part of this discussion. I'm running because I have a love for Smyrna and I'm so excited to be here. I grew up all over the place, so I cannot say that I was born and raised from here, but I can tell you that I've lived 7 years here and I'm raising my kids here. Both of them go to Smyrna Elementary School. Just seeing them grow up in a community such as this has been so much fun. And so I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the future that they're going to have when they're going to be in Smyrna and say, hey, I grew up in Smyrna, Georgia. I've seen the great things that come out of Smyrna, Georgia. I'm running because I think that we're missing a connectivity where we really need to drive diversity of housing. We need to really think about the problem we're having here in regards to housing. We also need to really start thinking about the sustainable future for not only our generations, but generations to come. That's very important. And also finding a place where people are having community here within Smyrna. We're not just a thoroughfare driving through. We actually have places people want to like visit and stay and be connected and a part of. So
Thank you
that's
so
what
much
I
again.
bring to this forum.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Thank you. Great. Thank you, candidates. We'll now move to the panel question and answer portion of the forum. Each candidate again has up to 2 minutes to respond, and we'll ask that each candidate make sure you're unmuted for this portion of the forum. The first topic for the question and answer portion is around the topic of transportation and transit. And in our round robin fashion for question 1, we will start with Ms. Wagner. The question is, given the multitude of options currently available, what would be your plan for improved transit and mobility in Smyrna?
Absolutely. I think transit's a huge problem that we all face, especially in the sprawling suburbs that you get out of Atlanta. How do you get to one place to another? And I think that we really need to look at transit options if that's adding in more bus routes, adding in more connectivity to the downtown area. I know that there's Councilman Wheaton was working on microtransit options to try to fill a void that we have, and I really support those ideas. I also support really looking at other avenues of transit or transportation other than vehicles. I think that, in regards to sustainability, we need to start looking forward on how do we utilize more mass transit or how do we utilize bikes in a safe manner. And I think those are all things that we can accomplish by looking at what other cities have done who've done really great things and how we can tweak them and work them to what best fits our needs. So I really think looking at and talking with people that are experts in these fields and really listening to what would work for these spaces and trying to find a solution that would work best for our community.
Thank you very much. Fabulous. The same question for Mr. Starks.
All right, Ken, y'all are killing me with this 2 minutes. Each of these topics is an hour, but
Easily.
yeah, I had a interesting meeting with Smyrna chapter of the Cobb for Transit group, and we really talked about some of the transit options and about density. And when you actually look at the density of Smyrna, it's not usually a place that's ready for increased bus routes, for bigger transit options. And so I think that's just something to really pay attention to, be important, is what the facts kind of allude to. You look at the Windy Hill project, the proposed South Cobb project. I think these are actually really fantastic projects that the city is engaging in, where you have the thoroughfares where the traffic who need to pass through and trying to get from point A to point B are on the move, with the side roads that say, hey, look, we need to be bike friendly, we need to be pedestrian friendly, we got to give better access to local businesses. So I think those are all great ideas. There has been talked about a shuttle between the Battery and downtown, right? This kind of stuff. So there's the ideas out there, I believe. And there is, of course, the discussion for longer term about what happens as we grow. But again, you look at the South Cobb project, and again, there's these process issues there where that's SPLOST money that taxpayers have agreed to. Well, the city ended up taking a bunch of that SPLOST money, re-putting it into the downtown redevelopment project. And now all of a sudden, South Cobb is dependent on trying to get federal funding for that to move forward. If we don't get the federal funding, what is it? We'll probably have to go back to SPLOST again and try to raise more money. So it's a problem on those kind of issues where we just got to make sure we get that process and we don't stick taxpayers with tax increases. The other thing I'd say, just in general for traffic, is if you want to make people angry, the very first thing you do, though, is increase traffic, right? And along Spring Road, down from the Battery and the highway out here, I mean, the traffic's getting worse, and it is an issue that like people, when you knock on the door and you say, how's things going? How's traffic? They'll tell you traffic's getting bad. And I'm,
Yes.
it's a
Good points there, sir. Very good. And thank you for your comments. Next candidate is Ms. Natalie King.
Yes, I think that's something that we all have in common, is that we all hate traffic. I mean, no one wants to waste time sitting in traffic or feeling like they're having to deal with the pollution or the waste of time. It's economically very, very costly. But obviously we don't just drive around, obviously, in our city, in our circles. So it really is about density, like Michael said. That was a good point. It's about regional cooperation. It's about connectivity. It's about mobility. It's about giving people a choice, giving our citizens a choice so that they're not condemned or forced to get into a single occupant vehicle, so that we don't have to get into our individual cars, because that is really the root of the traffic. There are things that we can do to calm traffic. You have calm circles. You have also timing of the lights. I mean, there's definitely engineering solutions that we can work on that will improve things, but it's really about looking at things regionally. We have the Cumberland Community Improvement District that has focused and done wonderful work on transportation solutions. I would recommend definitely partnering with them. They're also on the edge of one of the biggest markets that we have, especially with the Battery here. So it's really about looking at how can we tap into the knowledge, the resources, and the political acumen, and build upon what's already being done, and also make something that fits our size, our density, and our budget, and give people the choice and the freedom. And some of it might be, connecting the corridors. Some of it might be, let's see how we can share some of the burden and how things actually connect, do the studies, which have already been done. Actually, we've done several traffic studies, but really rely on our experts. We've already heard a lot from our citizens. I have heard from them, and they are really tired of it. I have grown up here, so I certainly am aware of the difference between the 1-lane Spring Road and the 4-lane Spring Roads. And so
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, same topic for Miss Natalie Jones.
Thanks so much, Ken. So this is a tough issue that we're all faced with and that we're all engaging with in some way every day. And while I like the idea of alternative modes of transit, from a sustainability and from a reducing single occupancy vehicles, oftentimes they go unused. If you look at the light rail systems in Dallas and Seattle, and they're unused because today, the world we are in and our issue that we're dealing with is single occupancy vehicles and the traffic in Smyrna. So I agree with Michael that the South Cobb project, the Windy Hill project make a lot of sense right now for where we're at. And this is a topic that we do really have to dig in and look at the data and not jump into moving into alternative modes of transportation without studying the impact from a sustainability, environmental factor, and also practicality, whether or not that they'll actually get used by the citizens of Smyrna. So I think we need to approach it first today from a practical standpoint.
Thank you all very much for your comments on question 1. So we're ready to move into our second topic, which is around development and moratoriums. And for this question, we'll start with Mr. Starks. The question is, what is your stance on the townhome moratorium, and do you feel Ward 2 has the capacity to develop more homes to meet an ever-increasing population?
All right, great question. I would say in terms of the moratorium, it's one of those ones where it's probably using a hammer to hit a nail kind of a situation where townhomes are not by themselves a problem, right? It's when you approve 144 townhome development and you clear cut all the trees and you put it on Campbell and Spring Road, that's a problem. I think when you look at even the South Cobb project that incorporates mixed use developments with townhomes, residential homes, business and retail, that's stuff that can work. And I think that's reasonable use of townhomes, because clearly there's demand for townhomes. People like living in them. So I don't think that just putting a moratorium on them is necessarily effective. Regarding Ward 2, there is, it is an interesting mix of big commercial properties, big apartment complexes, condos, and then neighborhoods. So it's a really diverse housing mix that goes into Ward 2. There is room to build and to grow within Ward 2. How we do that, though, again, I think is really driven a lot by the traffic, honestly. And if we can't resolve and answer how is this going to impact traffic and people there, then I think that's a real disqualifier for developing housing in those areas. Like everybody said, the neighborliness is here. People love their neighborhoods. Everybody loves where they live for the most part, and just says, I don't want that to change. So I think we'll talk more about that in affordable housing a little bit, but I think I'll end there.
Very good, sir. Thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from Ms. King.
Well, I think that it's something that's a complicated topic. I mean, I have a master's degree in public policy, and it is still complicated with lots of different pieces, and certainly not one that we can summarize with solutions in 2 minutes. But there is a need for balance. We have several different redevelopment plans. The Livable Centers Initiative outlined several of them. That was a very helpful study, and it focused on development. We have the Belmont Hills mixed development. We have the Hawthorne Residential. We have the Jonquil Plaza, which is another mixed use development. The Cobb Concord mixed use development. These are all, like, you notice the common word is mixed. Diversity, mixed. So that is something that is a very important element when we think about it, to have informed, good building design, intelligent design, something that may cost a little bit more upfront, but actually reduces costs in the long term. So to be proactive, to be informed, not to be swayed by misinformation is important. I mean, to keep the character of what made Smyrna special, because I remember what it was like to, the character of the neighborhoods, the quality of life. I think everyone wants to be able to maintain that. But we also can't just pull up the ladder, behind us. I mean, no one wants a big development right next to them, but we have to be thoughtful and well designed. We have to have some kind of development. So we can't just like wish it to go away. So the some development then needs to be thought out and well designed with good architecture. And we certainly have the expertise around that. And I think some of the current developments that use mixed use are very smart, and we should continue to learn from that. And again, make it connected to the transportation and mobility, because that is another key part. I'm all about connections. So that certainly is very important, so that we can travel between the corridors, so we don't have the burden on one area of the neighborhood or on one street and not on another. So that's definitely a balance issue, and
Thank
one
you.
that we can use our current comprehensive plan and our livable centers initiative to.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, Miss Natalie Jones.
So I agree that we need to be very smart and thoughtful about building going forward, because density, particularly in Ward 2 along the Spring Road corridor, we are at our maximum today, and it's impacting the traffic, our previous topic. So I am in favor of the moratorium currently, because I think we need to pause on building new townhomes and apartment buildings. Certainly, while we look at the infrastructure that's required to support that building and that increased density. So my position is that today I am in favor of it, not forever, because I do think, as one of the other candidates mentioned, we can't completely pause all development going forward, but we do need to take the time and pause right now to be thoughtful about that development and what it looks like. And again, investing in the infrastructure along with the increased density.
Thank you very much. And we will wrap this topic up with comments from Ms. Wagner.
Absolutely. Housing is a huge topic, I know. As you can see, there's a huge supply and demand issue here. So there is a need for housing. Atlanta is growing rapidly, which only means our suburbs are only to grow rapidly as well. And currently, we're just facing a crisis where people aren't able to stay in their homes or not able to live in the cities that they want to live in. So I think that there is a need for housing. And so I am against the moratorium, because I think that this is just putting a roadblock in the way for what we need to do in order to have housing and to have inclusion, not exclusion. If you have one source of building, if you only have single family homes, you're going to have only one type of resident that lives here. If you have a diversity of housing options, you have more people that are able to live within the city. And I think that's important. That's one reason I came to Smyrna, is to see how awesome it is to live on the outskirts of Atlanta with such a diverse group of people that bring in all walks of life. And it's really fun to see that when, you take the kids to school, everyone's there. There's everyone. When I went to the park, like everyone's out in the park. You see so many different families and so many different people in the different life options, right? So I think that Ward 2, yes, is filled. It's full. However, there are lots of options out there for us in Smyrna to really grow. I think we could really do some stuff on South Cobb. We could really do some stuff on Card Parkway. We've got to really start looking into those options instead of subtracting things from the housing market. This also comes back to a climate thing. Everything's interconnected. If you have more diversity where it makes sense, then you're going to have less traffic, less issues that you're having with sustainability, with pollutions, because you have more people in a dense space. And if you have more people living there and having these mixed use communities that you're talking about, I think you will definitely have less traffic concerns. People are sleep, eating, playing, all right in that area. And so I think that's very important to have those places. We don't want people passing.
Thank you so much. Appreciate those comments. So I think we've warmed up very well with our first two topics. Let's move on to topic number 3, which is housing affordability. For this question, we will start with Ms. Kang. And the question is, what are some ideas you have towards making sure that longtime Smyrna residents can continue to reside here in light of increasing housing costs? Ms. Kang.
Well, I think one of the key issues is making sure that the people who work here can afford to live here. And that's affordability for the workers here, workforce affordability. So I think that is very important to have the teachers, our nurses, our police force, our fire people, firemen, firewomen, be able to live here. So that is something that is often overlooked. So I think that there are, again, strategies that we can look at in terms of being able to make it more affordable. Again, it's going to go back to diversity and mixed use and having mixed levels of affordability so that you have a choice. You have a choice and freedom, and it's not just all new development luxury homes that are new homes. So that's what I would support. You know, I mean, back to the moratorium, I think, again, it depends on, you know, what the people need and what audience and what stakeholders we're looking at. We have a comprehensive plan that goes through 2040. We have a livable centers initiative. All of that is going to connect to these issues between where we live, where we work, where we play. And we want to make sure that the corridors are connected because we have some exciting redevelopment that is happening. But if we don't connect them, as Nellie Jones mentioned, you know, they might go unused, or as Michael mentioned, you know, density isn't the right fit. So we need to take a look at everything that we've done already, the studies that have incorporated both participation from the citizens and from our experts, and make sure that it's just not sitting on the shelf. And we have some great staff to help us to do that. So I would really emphasize some workforce affordability. And again, I think using infill, we don't have that much undeveloped land. So we need to look at how we can upgrade and make sure that
Thank you very much.
is affordable. So use what we have already and upgrade it.
Thank you so much. Very good. Next up, Ms. Jones.
This is a topic that I'm really passionate about. So many of my neighbors wouldn't be able to live in Smyrna today if they were just moving in because they're teachers or they're with the police. And so I think there's so many things that the city council can do to address this issue. And one that has been successful in other cities is inclusionary zoning, where you're able to incentivize developers when they are building a new multifamily housing complex, but you can incentivize the developer to have, they can build more units if they make 30% of them at below market rates. And again, I think it's a great way. So many people have mentioned diversity and how important that is to our community. And again, the people that work here, we want to be able to live here. And so I think we've got to start thinking that way and looking at different tactics as a city council so that we can keep housing affordable in Smyrna for all of our citizens.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Wagner.
So this is really piggybacking on what we just discussed, because housing is such an important need, kind of what we were talking about. I think that we continue to do kind of the things I was mentioning before, really looking into a diversity of housing options, which will bring different types of housing, which will bring different sides of affordability. Having programs like inclusionary zoning, having the workforce housing, those things are great ideas. Also incorporating senior living into that. I think it's important for people that want to make their home here and stay here, that they can do that. And I feel like at this point, there's a lot of being pushed out and not feeling like this can be continued their home when, you know, there's mega, you know, houses being built right next door to you. And I see that, you know, just down my road, just down any road that you pretty much go down. And that poses a problem, that there's an affordability crisis that we're seeing here. And I think that goes back to the supply and demand, really going back into different types of housing, having the mixed use, having the senior living, also, you know, having duplexes or triplexes or different types of communities like those as well, which is just gives you another diversity of housing options. But these all need to be done in smart ways. I don't think that they just need to be put up everywhere. We really have to focus on where the population needs are. Kind of going back to that South Cobb Drive, those types of areas or what the LCI study says, that we need to create more diversity of housing there. So not necessarily going into subdivision, tearing all the houses down and creating townhomes or apartments. It's going to where those places make sense and piggybacking on what's already there. So I think that there's great strides that need to be made to fix this housing crisis that we're in.
So thank you so much. And wrapping up this topic with Mr. Starks.
Great. These have been awesome comments by the other candidates. I would just say one thing, that Smyrna's in demand, which is a good problem, but it's still a problem, right? And when we talk about housing affordability as an issue, it's, you know, there's a lot of people are in the metro Atlanta area who can afford to move here. And that's part of the problem, is developers can build and sell houses because people want to move to Smyrna. So I think we have to have a real laser focus about that, right? About keeping people in their homes who currently live here and being focused on people who would be forced out. And they did talk about the inclusionary zoning. My wife, you know, her first house that she bought was a duplex off of Matthews Court, you know, and there used to be full of duplexes and triplexes in that area, and they're almost all gone now and replaced by other large houses. I was on a steering committee for the 2040 vision for Smyrna, and they'd had so many great ideas during that meeting. And so they even talked about something like cottage homes, right? They're smaller homes with shared courtyards and facilities. They're like, there's a lot of different options and things you can explore. But so I think we just need to be really smart about that, but also saying that for having grant programs for low income residents to make repairs on houses is very important, and something like senior property tax exemptions as well for those people who are elderly and want to stay in their homes, I think is critical for the city.
Excellent. Thank you all for your comments on that topic. I can clearly hear that we're all very passionate about trying to solve that problem, which is wonderful to hear. All right, our next topic then is around public health and safety. And while that is a very broad topic, we wanted to focus in on something more immediate in our history. And so we will start this question with Ms. Jones responding first. The question is, what are some lessons you feel we have learned as a community as a result of the pandemic from the last couple of years?
That is a great question. I think public awareness is key. One of the things coming out of the pandemic that I think Smyrna did very well was really taking care of those people who were hurting from losing jobs or having their businesses closed. I love the Support Smyrna organization. And so I also thought there was a lot of connectivity between the city of Smyrna and a lot of the nonprofits in our community, again, to reach out and take care of those people who were hurting initially, particularly in the beginning. But in terms of the pandemic itself, I was in favor of trying to keep small businesses open as much as we could, but doing it in a very safe way. And again, I think Smyrna did an excellent job throughout the pandemic of balancing the need for safety and well-being, along with access to information, access to testing sites, access to vaccines. So, but all in all, I felt we came through it as a community stronger than ever. So that's a great question.
We thank you for your answer. Next, we'd like to hear from Ms. Wagner.
Absolutely. I feel like during this pandemic, we've all learned how to shift gears rather quickly in our personal life and our business life. So I think piggybacking on what you were saying, Natalie, I think Smyrna did a great job in regards to creating community programs like Support Smyrna. I think that the engagement with the community is something that I loved seeing, really helping others that were in need. overcome what everyone was facing. And it wasn't just one person facing this. This was everyone facing it and coming together as a community, which is one reason why I love Smyrna, to see everyone come together and really help each other. Some other things, going back to, we've all learned how to shift gears. Sorry, I was like writing some notes down on here. But I think that really just engaging within the community is important, and seeing that we did those and having those accessibilities to facilities and getting shots in areas, having that is huge. And that's something I think we learned, shifting gears and getting the wireless routers for the schools that we needed, and schools that, not necessarily are under Smyrna, but they're Smyrna kids, they're Smyrna people, that we need community in all facets. So I think that was a good learning lesson, and hopefully we don't have to go through this again. But just continuing to keep our eyes and ears out and being aware of our surroundings and situations.
Very good. Thank you. Next, Mr. Starks.
Great. One of the topics that I've been focused on trying to talk with residents about is mental health. One of the real outcomes of the pandemic has been a mental health crisis in the US, and Smyrna is not immune to that. So I was actually emailing with the chief of police recently, because in 2021, we had 2 people who were shot and killed in Smyrna. Right, one by the Cobb County Police and one by Smyrna Police. And both of them were completely related to mental health crises that people were having. One guy tried to go to the emergency room, got turned away, ended up taking a person hostage. SWAT team was called in. So I emailed and I said, what's the Smyrna Police doing about mental health? And so he responded that this year, well, last year, they were doing mental health training and classes, but this year, everybody, including all the 911 operators, are taking what's called a crisis intervention course, I believe. And it's a 40-hour training and certification that is focused on mental health, understanding mental health risks of people and how to deal with that and de-escalate situations and that kind of stuff. So I think it's a fantastic start. We know that mental health issues aren't going away. When you look at the crisis, even amongst young people. And so I think the city has to really be focused on figuring out not just how the police department responds to mental health crises, but other departments and other options for people. So we can kind of, before it gets to that level, we should have options to help Smyrna residents try to help address their mental health problems.
Wonderful. Thank you for those comments. And we will close out this topic with comments from Ms. Kane.
Thank you. Because I am a health educator with a professional national organization, I was appointed to the Governor Kemp's National Task Force for COVID-19. Obviously, we focused on the state of Georgia. So I got a firsthand look and at the needs, at some of the shortcomings, and at some of the actions that were taken. Internet access and connectivity was definitely a big one. I think, just because of the shift and everyone having to go remote. So that was a very big issue. Access, equitable access not only to the tools, but also to the resources, from the grants to the protective gear. I mean, when we were starting up, it was even just about how do we get the tests, how do we do tracing? So I think the important lessons from that was about equity, it was about access, it was about preparedness. It was also about building coalitions. I mean, as a small business owner, I was hit directly around that. As an Asian American, I was also affected by the Asian American backlash that happened about it being called, a China virus, even though I've lived in Smyrna all my life. So the need to build coalitions between businesses, healthcare workers. We want to give people the freedom of choice and personal responsibility. We also realize that we don't want to incur unnecessary costs. And we also need to equip our public safety employees. We need to invest in our public officials, maybe to be able to, again, balance public health and safety with freedom and choice. Mental health is definitely something that we'll have to be watching as well in terms of the post-pandemic impacts. But again, I think the preparedness can happen by making sure we invest in our public health officials, that we invest in the prevention that's needed. Now that we have had a major test with that, I think now is the time to do the investment and the preparedness so that we can be better prepared and to support our healthcare workers.
Thank you. Very good. Awesome responses, everyone. I want to take just a pause in our forum just to make sure we're in good shape. We're about halfway home at this point. How's everybody feeling? Good. All right. If you need to get a little refreshment, this will be a good time to do so. And if everyone is in good shape, we will continue with our fifth topic, which is around environment and sustainability. We will begin this question set with Ms. Wagner. And the question is, what are your thoughts on local environmental concerns, such as the continued loss of our tree canopy, the sterigenics issues, and coal ash from Plant Atkinson? Ms. Wagner.
Absolutely. So sustainability is a huge issue that we're facing every day, just like all these other issues that we're talking about. These are all interconnected. In regards to transit, in regards to housing, we have to really think about where we're building and building in a good space where density makes sense so that we're not tearing down all these trees. Repurposing areas that, you know, are using all maybe 2-story flat buildings that are maybe old office buildings, creating those into more of a dense area. That's not creating an issue where we're taking down our tree canopy. That's not an issue where we're removing a lot of those things and really just developing in a smart way and in a more sustainable way. Also thinking sustainable about, you know, what our car fleets are, maybe switching all of those to more of a sustainable car, more of an eco-friendly hybrid or plug-in vehicle, thinking about every aspects that are out there in order to help with sustainability. Like I said, all of these things are interconnected and really just need to build in a smart way for future growth. In regards to stereogenics and with the coal plants and all of those types of things, you know, we just need to work with the counties. We need to work with the surrounding areas to make sure that we are really looking into these different issues that are about, and you know, just finding solutions in order to make those better.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Next, Mr. Starks.
Great. One of the things I think about is when you can see what's coming right in front of you, you need to take the time to be prepared. Like, we know what the future is. I think we're all in agreement, right? We have climate change, we have all of these sustainability issues, and the city needs to be working in that direction. That being said, I also think that the city needs to not just do things as a form of representation to show like, oh, we're doing the right thing. I think it needs to be financially a good policy that we're implementing these kinds of things. So let's talk about tree canopies, right? I think it's pretty obvious that we shouldn't be cutting down old growth trees unless really necessary. And it should be focused on, not on homeowners, but on developers, and the city should be the real focus of that. I really think that the onus should be on those people and saying that, what's the reason for removing this tree? You know, if you don't have a really good reason for it, it shouldn't come down. I mean, you look at the downtown redevelopment, it's just like the classic example where there's old growth trees, and the community comes out, speaks their mind, says, we don't want to cut down those trees right there. We don't want to change the roundabout necessarily. So there was plenty of room for agreement. The city council very quickly votes, pushes it through, and within almost a week has cordoned it off and has cut down all of the trees, right? That's just bad process. It was a bad decision for the city of not listening to its residents there. So I think it's important first that the city get it right and lead by example there. And then the focus should be on developers of really demanding a lot more from them on not allowing them to cut down trees. And we can come up with policies and land uses for that. So
Thank you very much, sir. Next, Ms. King.
Well, I do strongly believe in that we shouldn't lose track of the real issues. We don't get lost in the trees and lose sight of the forest. I mean, all of this is connected. I served on the planning board when I was able to go up to up north, and I was able to work with the conservation board on looking at some of the win-win solutions. It's not about demonizing the developers or the builders or being, for or against them. We really forged win-win solutions. Part of it was just kind of busting some of the myths around development. One thing that I feel very strongly about, if we're talking about public health and the environment, is the Sterigenics plant. I mean, one major issue is about enforcement of some of the codes that we already have. That's a way that we can make sure that we address some of these issues that are threats to our health without having to find lots of money or without having to raise, taxes for it. There are ways that we can make sure that enforcement is happening on air pollution and water pollution. For example, the EPD for Georgia is not very good at enforcing it on the companies. So they've had 5 years to clean up their act. That is something that ethylene oxide does not discriminate based on who you are, what you look like, where you live. And so I think that is very, very important for us to make sure that Sterigenics is kept accountable, that, they are not permitted to just simply, pollute our air and water with it. And that is just unacceptable if it's not being enforced. So again, some of the regional and state planning and stakeholders coming together, it's not about us and them. We really can't afford it with our health to start getting divisive on the sides. We need to help the developers and builders be able to make sure that what they do well, if there's good design, good architecture, good development, that's good for the environment. Obviously.
Thank you so much. And we will close this topic out with comments from Ms. Jones.
So many great comments. I don't know that I have a lot more to add, but I do 100% agree with Natalie and her comments that with regard to the Sterigenics plant, that's a great opportunity for everyone to come together and work with the EPA and the EPD of Georgia and just make sure that they're enforcing and staying on top of it. I think that's very important for the environment and the health of our community. With regard to the tree canopy, that's one of the most fantastic assets of living in Georgia and in Smyrna. And I appreciate the work that our tree board does with the mayor to make sure that we're doing as much as we can with regard to the conservation, and it should be on the developers. And that's where we really need to focus when they're building a new development. They need to limit the number of trees that they're cutting down and then also make sure they're compensating by planting additional trees. So I agree with many of the comments made by other candidates on that topic.
Thank you so much. All right, the last topic in our formal question and answer before we get to the ad hoc section is around the topic of redistricting. For this question, we will begin with Mr. Starks. The question is, in 2016, the wards in Smyrna were redistricted without widespread knowledge of the citizens. And as a result, citizens went to voting polls that were no longer served in their area. What will you do to keep citizens informed of major issues and concerns such as this?
All right, thank you for that. That's a really good question. I will tell you that it is difficult. It is a difficult process to engage with people. There's a lot of people, you even go knock doors. I've been amazed at how many people are actively engaged, but there's lots of people who are like, I'm good. I'm just happy living here, right? So it is always a challenge to form those lines of communication with people, but it also takes somebody who's just committed to doing the work, right? And so I really like Susan Wilkerson from the council because she is one of those people. She takes the time to go still knock doors, to make phone calls, to be constantly out in the community talking with people. And I just think that's what you have to do. And so you see some of our council members who just got voted in, and it doesn't, they're not out there representing their constituents very well. And so that's like what whoever wins this has to just really be committed to being out there and working with the community, even after they're elected, and in all kinds of different ways. The city, you know, when they want to communicate about trash days and things, they do a great job. I got a magnet about upcoming holidays that's on my refrigerator. There's ways to do it, you know, and we can work with this committee, this city of Smyrna to inform everyone about those changes. So.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next, Ms. King.
Well, I think democracy is non-negotiable. And I think, you know, representation is only as good as the actual representation. So I am all for, you know, fair elections, accessible polling places, clear communication. I have worked so hard in trying to just let people know where they can go vote, when they can go vote, how they can go vote, what the hours are. You know, I hope that you'll vote for me, but just get out there to vote, because just having 15 to 20% is not representative, and you don't want democracy to be hostage only to a few people, you know, who show up. So I'm very much for, you know, making sure that everything is fair and transparent. I also believe that the people who benefit from redistricting and drawing the lines should not be drawing them. We should clearly have an independent commission, and some of it might be citizen input, but you know, we should definitely not have the folks who are affected, who are going to be elected, drawing the lines, period. So I think that the citizens deserve that. And I think that we want to continue on this path of, you know, our own city council being transparent and accessible and inclusive. And I think that we have a great track record so far. I'd like to continue to see that moving forward. Again, I will, you know, want to work for the people. I'm going to fight for the people, not for a party. And there's a reason that this position is nonpartisan. So I think it's all about, you know, getting the information out clearly, timely, and making sure that, you know, we earn the trust of our citizens. And that's why I see it as an opportunity and a privilege to be able to have the opportunity to serve.
Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Jones.
It is so hard to get the word out and communicate. And I think it takes the person in this role to be actively engaging with our community and finding creative solutions to communicate, because people all communicate differently and respond differently to different types. So I think it takes a multi-pronged approach to really connect with the broader Ward 2 group and get out that important information. With social media today, I mean, that's a fantastic channel to make sure that we're utilizing with the citizens of Ward 2. Again, we may not hear a lot of the noise that is coming from other channels, but we listen to our HOA, and we've got a lot of fantastic HOAs along the Ward 2 corridor. I've had the privilege of engaging with some of them throughout this process and hearing their concerns. And so that's why having an HOA council is one of my very first initiatives. And if it's a neighborhood without an HOA, we'll have neighborhood representatives, but making sure that we have that group that's connecting once a month, bringing the issues from their neighborhoods to the table, and then communicating back out the important information to their neighbors. Again, I think that's a great way to communicate, is an HOA council. I think a Ward 2 newsletter that people can get, having more social opportunities at least a couple times a year where we can come together and just get to know each other socially instead of getting home from work and going into our homes, but creating those opportunities for people to meet. Because when you know your neighbor and know your surrounding community, it's much easier to not let issues divide us, but to be more of a community. So those are a few of my ideas.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. And we'll close out the formal question and answer portion of our forum with comments from Ms. Wagner.
Absolutely. These are all great comments on how we can really stay connected. In this day and age, I think it's very important to stay connected. And there's so many different avenues, as many of you were talking about, in regards to get the message across. And I think using all of those platforms are important. I think it's important to engage within the community, not just at the time when your name's on a ballot, but when it's important every day of every day of every year. It's important to try to connect with those that you're serving. Like, this position is a position of serving people. It is not a position of power. It is a position to have someone's voice heard in the needs of the community. So having newsletters, having get-togethers, having continue engagements within HOAs, even apartment homes, that's important, because people that live in apartments are just as much a part of this community as those who have purchased a home or a condo or townhome. So I think those types of connectivity and engagements very, very important. And having those engagements will continue to find avenues to reach newer generations so that everyone can be involved in a process of how Smyrna is run, is how we can really connect on what everyone's needs and wants. It's not just the voice of one, it's the voice of many. And we're the funnel for that. So I think it's very important to have that community engagement, getting those names out. And I think those types of things would help people understand where these polling places are, where where they need to go in order to make these important decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you all for bearing with us through the formal question and answer portion. I have to say, I'm just extremely impressed by the group as a whole. You all are very engaged and thoughtful, and clearly are passionate about making our community better. So thank you for that. And thank you for your comments. We will now move on to the ad hoc question portion of the forum, where we have questions from residents as well as the Smart Smyrna organization. And there may even be one or two questions submitted in the chat room as well. So I want to start with the first question, and you have, again, 2 minutes to respond here. The question is, what is your understanding of the proposed development known as the Quad, and what kind of businesses would you like to see there? We will start this question with Ms. Kane.
Well, I'll reiterate what I've said before, which is it's important to have mixed use, both residential and commercial sometimes. Other times it might be the type of housing that's provided. So I'll say again, my understanding is that having a mixed use between that is best, giving people freedom and choice, making sure that we have accessibility, making sure that we've already done the transit studies to know where the ingress and egress are when we have a development, especially when it's a quad and especially when it's at an intersection. Especially when it's a large development, I think that we should have what I've learned from my time living in other cities is to have a charrette, which is worthwhile investment to do on the front end, because it brings in citizen input, not only into the development, but the design, and making sure, everything we just talked about in terms of knowing ahead of time and community engagement, and making sure that we're aligned with our comprehensive plan and our Smart Smyrna goals and the livable cities studies. So just making sure that everything is aligned. And I would recommend a charrette for something as large as development like the Quad.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ms. Jones.
All right, candidly, I'm a little confused on where we are with the Quad, because it was a mixed use development. I think initially it was townhomes, then a green space with temporary and permanent dining establishments. Now I've heard it's going back to mixed use. And so it seems to be a moving target. And again, Natalie seemed very clear that it was a mixed use. I've heard so many different scenarios for that space that I think we need a little more clarity. And I think that was a great word, Natalie, alignment. So that we all do know what's going on and have a voice in what happens in that space. I love the idea of a green space. Cynthia mentioned earlier that Ward 2 shouldn't just be a pass-through corridor, but we want it to be a place with destinations where neighbors come together that can help build communities and families can come. And so I do love the idea of having a beautiful green space with dining establishments that is more of a destination. Again, I would have to get more information around mixed use or townhomes or exactly where we are with the plan today.
Good. Thank you so much. Ms. Wagner.
Yes. So from my understanding, I think there has been some different talks about what this development will look like. And I think that's a lot due to COVID and changes and things that are happening within our city and our state. However, what I envision and what I would love to see in this space is definitely a place where you can come together. I would love to see potentially a mixed use development where you have some housing, but you also have great restaurants, you have walkability, where you really are not staying in your car. You're going in there and you're parking, you're getting out, or you're living there and walking down the hallway, and you're having places you can get out and about, having myself and my family, like we love to go out and sit down and have a restaurant and the kids go play in the park and you're right there. And that's something that I would love to see in an area like this. Definitely Spring Street right now is just a corridor people drive down. There's nowhere to really stop, right? And you're just driving maybe to the Battery. There's nowhere to really play. So having that green space, having that area, I love that idea. Having, there's a little place called White Duck Taco, which is like a great little place. That's what I envision in those types of establishments. Not necessarily that restaurant, but something like that. What's very local, very family oriented, very someplace you want to go after work and you want to maybe grab a beer, or maybe you just want to sit there and read a book, somewhere where you can get out and about. And that's a perfect place for it because you already see that happening at Rev, and it's just extending that down that little strip of area. So it's very exciting to see what comes there, and I hope that a really cohesive vision comes to that location.
Good. And Mr. Starks.
All right. Let me just start by saying the documents that the city council voted on and that are online are only for a restaurant and green space and don't include housing. I believe that was dropped as part of that. I've talked to, I think everybody agrees that having restaurants in the quad is going to be great for Ward 2 and are excited about it. It's again one of those process issues where there are people who have concerns who've tried to bring it to the city and haven't been heard, including some of the business owners over there who, a lot of it involves the traffic and Jonquil Drive and the size of Jonquil Drive over near Rev and all of that area. It's a very narrow road. A lot of kind of weird entry and exit points. So I've reached out to Ashley White, who's the city engineer, about that, what the city's plan is, if there's anything planned for redoing Jonquil Drive. I haven't heard back yet. And so part of it is you have the big trucks, because if you continue along Jonquil Drive, you have the larger businesses back there as well. You also have the Deaf Church right there on the corner of Jonquil Drive and Corn Road, as well. And so I haven't been able to get in touch with them, but I was very curious on what their position was and what their thoughts were. So I think in terms of the restaurants, I think it's great. I think people are super excited about it. It's again, process of getting it right, making sure we understand the traffic impact. There's some of the people who live in the townhomes on those side roads who say trucks already cut through their neighborhoods as well and cause a problem because of that intersection. So I know the city council is doing a left turn phasing, proposal right now to try to better understand the intersection a little bit. But yeah, I think that they need a lot more. It needs to really be thought out a little bit better before we move forward. So.
Great comments from all of you. Thank you so much. We have another community question. This one takes us in a slightly different direction, but I think it's a fair question for the group. A great playground was placed at Windy Hill Community Center a few years ago, but it's not very user-friendly during the summer months because the trees that were planted there will take years to provide shade in those areas. Is it possible to find a secondary solution to provide shade to that area? And we will start this question with Ms. Jones.
Yes, shade sales are a very cost-effective way to provide shade to an area while the trees are growing to the point where they can provide that shade. It's a very simple structure, and Sunbrella makes a fantastic product that you just create a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, well-designed shade sail for the area would be my recommendation.
Excellent. Ms. Wagner, your thoughts?
I love that park as well. I live right down the street. My kids, I pass it every day. They're like, can we stop at the playground? I'm like, we got like 5 minutes. Come on. So I completely understand the need for the tree there. From my understanding, that's an unincorporated Cobb area. So that is a Cobb County park. However, I think that we could really have a partnership there where we're really talking with those individuals to create need for shade, talk about when we're building these areas, having more mature trees potentially planted or more thoughtful process on how we're going to shade these areas, because it does get hot and then nobody's going to be utilizing the space when it's that warm, or issues of burning and things like that if you're going down a slide, and a 3-year-old hitting those hot spots are not fun. So I think that is definitely something that can be done, and having a partnership with Cobb County to create parks that are in our area that really are thoughtful and providing a need. And I think that's a great idea.
All right, awesome. Mr. Starks.
All right. Like a lot of others, I take my daughter to that park as well. And it is a very fun park, and it does get very hot. And so I just think in general terms, I mean, there was a note about the Jonquil Park as well on Spring Road. Having like that, the Windy Hill doesn't have any really shaded areas to sit. So at least the Jonquil Park, has shade. So in general terms, I think Smyrna does a really great job on the parks and the areas for children to play and are pretty thoughtful. So I think that's all I have for that. But thank you.
Very good, sir. And Ms. King.
I appreciate the intention and the effort of the parks. I actually am kind of a kid at heart, so I do like to play in some of those areas, or at least enjoy part of it. But certainly the shade is, the lack of shade is a concern. I know that there are ways to not only kind of balance sustainability and using more eco-friendly materials in designing a play area and a picnic area where it's not only less reflective and less absorbent, but it's actually better on the knees, for little kids and also the parents that are there. It provides, like I said, less heat and temperature reflection. I have a friend and colleague who specializes in this. Again, it goes back to not doing this in piecemeal, not just putting kind of a bike court, bike lane where it doesn't connect to anything, not just kind of putting and spending the money on a play area or exercise area where people aren't going to use it. So again, not doing kind of ad hoc and piecemeal expenses in development, which are very well intended and they cost our taxpayer money, but may be unused. And then it gives an argument to folks who are against it to say, look, it's not used, so we shouldn't do it anymore. But that's not really an accurate portrayal of what's happening. So what I would try to work towards is, again, trying to make sure that these ideas are implemented in a thoughtful way, better design. Again, and it may take a little bit more time and effort on the front end, whether it's process, getting the input, or getting a better designer. But I think in the long term, it will reduce our costs and it will enhance the quality and enhance participation and engagement. because a playground or a park or an exercise fitness center or a bike trail that goes unused is really a waste of taxpayer money. And I think
Yes.
it's something that we should take a look at. I think we have the professionals, we have the plans. We just need to kind of bring it all together. And in some cases, it might mean a partnership, with
Yes, thank you. Very good. I think we have one last ad hoc question, and this is more of a blue sky question. So obviously there's no right or wrong answers here, but just to get you thinking in a slightly different vein. So it's fairly open-ended, but the question is, how would you like the Department of Agriculture to support our community? How would you like the Department of Agriculture to support our community? And we will start this question with Ms. Wagner.
This is a really interesting question. It's a great question. I think that getting the Department of Agriculture involved is talking more in regards to how can we continue to be a sustainable community? How can we thoughtfully grow, thoughtfully work through, not cutting down trees, work through development that's happening to really help understand the best way to go about those things. I think that the development and growth it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And we want to do that in a way that we really are looking towards the future, but we need to do that in measures that would really not affect our environments. And so I think having that kind of partnership and talking with them would be something that would be beneficial, and kind of having that interaction with them. So it's a very interesting question to think about. And I think it would be a good solution to kind of talk through and engage on finding solutions.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Starks.
All right. I think on this one, as I said earlier, nobody knows everything. And for this one, I think I'm going to have to admit that I don't know the answer to this question. I'm not sure the ways that Smyrna and the Department of Agriculture could work together. So that would be something there's a lot I still have to learn. I will admit that. So, but this one's a tough one for me.
And I appreciate your honesty there. No worries. Ms. Kane.
Sure. Actually, I've had direct interactions and worked with the Department of Agriculture a lot because of I make my own sauces, and I'm a small business owner. And so Commissioner Black and I know each other well through the Georgia Grown program. So they have done a lot for small business owners. They also, it may not be applicable directly to Smyrna per se, but they do a lot with community farmers markets. I know that we have our own, which is wonderful. It's really about connecting the land and the food and the environment. And they not only are, kind of a regulatory agency, but they have a lot of wonderful programs for the community that do that. Because when we talk about, where we're building our houses or where we're playing, or the green space and tree covers, I mean, all of that is really connected. And all of that relates to our quality of life and livable neighborhoods. And we all want to be in a place where we feel good about that. So it's kind of where, everything comes together between the environment, sustainability, and business. And I appreciate them. I've appreciated the grant programs, the relief programs, and I know that they have many other programs that I haven't taken advantage of, but that would have impact on our businesses and in our community related to the environment.
Awesome. Thank you there. And finally, Ms. Jones.
I think it's a great opportunity to find a new way to partner with an agency that's there and see what resources that the city would have access to that we could better utilize that we're not using today. For example, around community farming and farmers markets, green roofs. I don't know that we have any in Smyrna that I'm aware of, which I think is a fantastic area to explore. And I think the Department of Agriculture could be a fantastic resource for that. The old post office building in Chicago was just renovated and has a 3.5 acre green space on the roof where they have honeybees and plants. And so again, I think it's really about partnership and finding what resources are available to make Smyrna better.
Fantastic. Thank you again. And then we have what I would call a speed round question. Just a quick response. Again, this is more blue sky. But if we had the funds to build a community garden, where would you situate it? Where would you build it? And we will start that round of answers with Mr. Starks.
All right. It was funny. They were just talking in the Smyrna Vision 2040 meeting about community gardens and how there is a growing demand for them, and how we, I'm trying to remember where the current, there's one community garden I know, and it's always full. You can never get a plot because they're always taken. Where would another community garden be? That's a really great question. Gosh, I don't know. I'd have to think about this one for a minute. Somewhere very accessible, but a nice green space to work. Trying to think of. I was trying to think of the Belmont. No, but yeah, this is tough. I need my map. So, yeah, I don't know off the top of my head where the perfect location would be for it. So let me let one of the other candidates. I'm gonna write down their answer for this one.
And certainly food for thought for the future.
Yeah.
So, Ms. King, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's community gardens are great. I mean, I have access to one myself. I think that we should incorporate them and integrate them into really most of these areas. I think every ward should have one. And I think we should be thinking of it as, who doesn't have a community garden? I mean, the Cooper Lake area, it's like near where my bus route was, for Griffin. There's a lot of green space there. It's right in a big older residential neighborhood. Have one, right next to like our city offices and the Bronner area. There's just a little bit, you don't need a lot of space. Like literally you just, you can have like a 20 by 20 space. It can be large, it can be small. Ward 7 has a lot of new development now, a lot of green space. I would say, Lewis is doing great things over there. I think that it should be incorporated with all the new multi-unit family houses there. Those are just a few ideas, but I think it's really about where you wouldn't put one, because I think it's really integral to not only having green space, but a place to engage, connecting kind of the wonderful benefits of having fresh vegetables and produce from it. Like I mentioned, the Georgia Grown program, I was just at the Jonquil Festival as part of the Georgia Grown program, which was connected to the Department of Agriculture. And it's not just about fruits and vegetables either. It's about value added products that can be sold at the feed and seed. It's about, jams and jellies that, Aunt Fanny's Cabin sold. The early entrepreneurship, example was there. So it's really about thinking more broadly. It's not just raising chickens and pigs, but it's also about small businesses and artisanship and crafts, different kind of crafts that can happen. So it's not just a garden, it can be a community space as well. So I would love to see one in every ward and in every major community neighborhood.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Jones, where would you situate one?
The first place that came to mind was along Concord in that linear park area. There's so much beautiful green space there. I think Smyrna Market Village was mentioned because I think there's a lot of fantastic areas still around the city offices and community center that we could utilize for that. And then another one was the quad. That would make it, again, another drawing feature if we had a community garden as part of that quad, and the restaurants could plant their vegetables and herbs that they could pick from to utilize in the restaurants. And so those were the top three that just immediately came to mind.
Oh, great. And Ms. Wagner?
I love this idea. This is something that I've seen in many communities that I've been a part of. And it's something that people love, even if it's just going down and getting herbs or something like that. That is something that it brings community together. And I think that it's great places that people can come and connect with. I know that the Smyrna Elementary School has a community garden, and my kids love going over there and being a part of that. Something that I grew up with, my grandfather had a farm, and like going out and actually like picking your vegetables and eating those, it's fun. And being a part of an urban community and having those fresh fruits and vegetables are important, but also to what Natalie was saying, it's not only fruits and vegetables, but other items as well. And I think that also this would bring lots of community doing honeybees, which would, I've seen throughout Atlanta, a lot of people are doing rooftop honeybee areas that are just repollinating and doing great things for the environment. So I love this idea. And I think that this would actually probably be a great thing to talk with the Department of Agriculture about in regards to where they can actually put these that would be sustainable and make sense. But I think that they need to be accessible, and I think that they need to be everywhere. You know, one thing, my son is really into recycling and sustainability, and he's asking, when are we going to have a compost bin? When are we going to do this? And I love that. I love seeing what's being brought in from, you know, what they're learning and what we're seeing our next generation really focusing on. And I mean, I have to tell you, like, I pride myself in trying to recycle, trying to do those types of things, but my son has really pushed me to do even more, and to have something like that we can take our kids to really help them learn what the next generation or next, you know, new life will be, because we need those types of things in an urban setting.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your openness around these speed round questions. We really appreciate it. And just so you know, the question around the Department of Agriculture actually came from the Department of Agriculture. So don't feel badly about your responses at all there. Okay, folks, we've got 5 minutes left, and that allows us to have your 1 minute closing remarks before we wrap up. And so we'll go in the reverse order of the opening remarks. So we will begin with Ms. Wagner.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone who is attending, and thank you, Ken, for you know, just moderating. Thank you for letting us be a part of this. This is a great discussion, and I think that regardless of who wins, this is a great opportunity to continuing opening up the dialogue and really seeing what the future of Smyrna is going to be, not only for Ward 2, but for all wards. You know, I'm running today because I see a need for a connected Smyrna. I see a need for housing, a diverse options of housing. I see a need for sustainability and for future generations. I also see a need for just the social infrastructure. I want to see more playgrounds. I want to see more green spaces. Please, people get out and play. So I think that it's important to find how these are all connected and really focus on that for future smart growth. And so that's why I'm running today. And thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss these questions.
Thank you. Mr. Starks.
All right, I just want to end. We never got to talk about the brewery, which are probably most people are happy about not to have to discuss anymore. But I did want to bring it up because it's a great example of why I'm running at sub level is because there's just so many process issues, and you can have different disagree about the brewery, where it should be located, whether it should be approved, this kind of stuff. But when I talk to residents and I say, hey, we sold this land for $600,000, and then we promised that we build them a park that's pretty much attached to it, and it's likely going to cost between $1 and $1.2 million. So we pretty much lost $600,000 of government money, or taxpayers will have to pony up, right? That's the kind of problems that Smyrna is facing that I really want to help the council focus on. I'm meeting with Louis Wheaton tomorrow morning for breakfast to try to say, how can we improve processes, how we can get people together to start to make changes that make sure the projects that we're passing through, these are really big, important projects for the city, are the right
Yes.
projects and done. Thank you, though.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kane.
Thank you also for the opportunity. I mentioned being at a crossroads, and I think that means not only that we have some tough decisions to make, but that we have many possibilities, and we've really had the good people to do it. I see those possibilities. We can find the solutions. It's not a us and them kind of thing. It's not an either or. And I've had many instances where I've been put in that situation and I have found the solution. I can bring the stakeholders together. I have worked solutions between builders and developers and the residents and the conservationists and the environmentalists. I think it's really about seeing the possibilities. And being someone who grew up in Smyrna, I do remember what made us special, and I think we still are. But it's not about going into the past. It's about really moving forward together. And I think that together we can, if we set aside partisanship, we set aside the divisiveness, we definitely can find the solutions that make it work. So a vote for me will be about moving forward together and bridging the old and the new. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Jones.
So I'm running really because of the community of Smyrna and how do we maintain that community as we move forward. And I think for us to thrive, we do have to be intentional about connectivity, about respect, about inclusivity. And what that looks like is really seeking out concerns and voices that haven't been heard before, and then creating those opportunities for better connection. If we don't create those opportunities, we're not going to thrive in the future. And that's what I think we need to build that bridge between the past and the future. I am for affordable housing and getting creative with solutions around that. I think that's one of our most pressing issues. And then smart development that really focuses not just on development, but also on our infrastructure so we can support it to have a better life, work life, and commuting balance as we go forward.
Fantastic, fantastic. I believe we've heard from everyone here on the panel. So with that, we are going to conclude our Ward 2 candidate forum. I really appreciate your participation. Thank you again, Ms. Jones, Ms. King, Mr. Starks, and Ms. Wagner for your time and participation this evening. And we do appreciate as well the online audience that has attended this evening as well. Lastly, thank you again, Smart Smyrna, for organizing and hosting this event. And my final comments to everyone, please remember that early voting ends on May 20th, and otherwise you can certainly cast your vote on Election Day on May 24th. With that, we will close at exactly 9:30 p.m. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Everyone.